2005 wasn't just another year for music, it was the year that emo and pop punk exploded onto the mainstream, forever changing music. Packed with legendary performances from Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance, the 2005 Warped Tour didn't just make history. It was the summer that punk went pop, and it was the starting point of alternative music for an entire generation. Created by Kevin Lyman, the Warped Tour has been around since 1995. In the beginning, Warped Tour was mainly a skateboarding and punk rock festival featuring bands like NoFX, Blink-182, Bad Religion, and Pennywise. But by 2005, it was no longer this scrappy skate punk festival. It had grown into a full-fledged cultural phenomenon. The 2005 tour wasn't just popular, it was the only year in Warped Tour's history where the tour turned a profit based on ticket sales. Think about that for a second. Throughout all of Warped Tour's history, from the 90s to 2018, 2005 was the only year that Warped Tour made a profit based on ticket sales. But what made that year and what made that tour so special? The lineup for the 2005 Warped Tour was legendary, featuring My Chemical Romance, who were fresh off of 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, Fall Out Boy, who only months earlier released From Under the Cork Tree, and the All-American Rejects Move Along came out during the tour. Bands like My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy were so popular at the time that they had bodyguards, and that was the first time anything like that had ever happened on the Warped Tour. The tour also featured Offspring, Census Fail, Motion City Soundtrack, Hawthorne Heights, The Starting Line, and many more. 2005 was the year that emo and pop punk broke into the mainstream. The era of Simple Plan and Good Charlotte was slowly ending, and new bands were ready to push the genre forward. Emo and pop punk were so popular that both My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy were mainstays on TRL. Now I know some younger viewers might have no idea what TRL even is, so just imagine a show on a TV channel that's all about music, and let's call that channel MTV, Music Television. Then that channel has a show called TRL, Total Request Live, where they would play the most requested music video of the day. So imagine if modern bands like Knocked Loose, Poppy, Sleep Token, The Story So Far, Neck Deep all battled it out every day, and fans voted to see which band had the most popular music video on Twitter, YouTube, or TikTok. That's basically what TRL was. It's also important to say that a lot of TRL's audience was teenagers, so pop punk and emo was being pushed to a young, passionate audience. I mean, all of TRL was basically a promotional vehicle for bands, movies, celebrities to reach that teen, early 20s demographic. And all of this hype was building and led to the 2005 Warped Tour. The 2005 Warped Tour had about 700,000 people attend. Now, for some context, the 2017 tour had about 300,000. So how much did people pay for Warped Tour in 2005? Based on everything I saw, it looks like tickets were around $25. Can you imagine paying $25 to see a concert today? Bands were also making a lot of money from merch on the 2005 tour. My Chemical Romance has the single-day merch record for Warped Tour, selling about $60,000 worth of merch in one day. Kevin Lyman also said that bands were regularly having days selling between $30,000 and $50,000 in merch. My Chemical Romance's merch manager has a pretty funny story about that '05 tour. Apparently, My Chemical Romance had bones or gloves with bones on them, like skeleton kind of gloves that weren't selling. Nobody was buying them. So Kate had a great idea to just cut off the fingertips, and then they became one of the hottest selling items on the tour. See, you emo kids all try to be mysterious and dark, but you really aren't that hard to figure out. You just wanted some fingerless gloves. The total revenue for the 2005 tour was about $25 million. It was the perfect place and time for all of these bands in one place to make an impact. 2005 really was the tipping point for emo and pop punk, because not only did they break into the mainstream, whether it was the music, the aesthetic, just the culture around emo and pop punk, all of that got cemented in mainstream pop culture. When you talk to casual fans of emo and pop punk, or even when you talk to elder emos right now in current day, usually the last album, the most recent emo album that they talk about that they really loved was something from this time period, '05, '06, '07. Usually, like, the most recent album they talk about is The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance, or maybe even Paramore's Riot. But really, after 2008, 2009, there was a massive drop-off of rock music in the mainstream. Eventually, we did get the emo and pop punk revival of the 2010s with bands like The Wonder Years, The Story So Far, Men Overboard, and Modern Baseball. But those bands didn't get anywhere near the mainstream attention that even the smaller bands on the 2005 Warped Tour got. You can still feel the effects of the 2005 Warped Tour today. Nostalgia for that entire time period of music in the emo and pop punk scene is at an all-time high. Pretty much all of those bands have reunited, they're all on these massive tours, they're all selling merch and tickets and vinyl represses. I mean, an entire new word, elder emo, was created because we had to come up with a word to describe people who are nostalgic for that era of emo and pop punk. Why do things like Emo Night, When We Were Young, and Sad Summer Festival exist? Because of the nostalgia for the 2000s scene. Sure, all of those outlets use music and bands from the 2010s scene, and even some bands from the modern scene, but the core foundation of all the things I just mentioned is that 2000s emo and pop punk scene. And to be clear, I have no problem with any of that stuff. I'm not anti-fun. I like fun. Sure, ticket prices are insane, but that's really across the board in every genre of music. It's not something that's just affecting emo, pop punk, and punk rock, so it's just something that we all have to deal with. And I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about emo nights, but I always thought about emo nights as, most of us who are fans of this music were never the cool kids. We were never the popular kids. So for emo nights to exist and a bunch of people go out and hang out, meet new people, and sing some MCR and sing some Fall Out Boy, have some drinks, have a fun night out in the town, I don't really think that's a negative. And if you want to see just how much nostalgia for the 2000s scene is still affecting the current music industry, all you have to do is look at My Chemical Romance's recent tour announcement. MCR sold about 365,000 tickets within the first few hours of tickets going on sale for the recent announcement of the Long Live the Black Parade tour. And this doesn't even mention MCR's reunion tour back in 2022 was the band's most profitable tour ever. All of this nostalgia makes sense. All of the bands that were active during that 2000s golden age of emo and pop punk, all the bands that were active, all the albums that were released at the time, those are the bands and albums that we talk about the most. Those are the bands and albums that were listened to the most, the bands and albums that influenced the most people. There's a reason that all those bands from the 2000s are still getting young fans, because if you're a young fan getting into emo and pop punk right now, and you just search on Spotify an emo and pop punk playlist, that playlist that is something like emo and pop punk classics is going to come up, and you know what bands are on there? The same bands from 15 and 20 years ago. My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, Taking Back Sunday, Green Day, The All-American Rejects. So it makes sense that all of those bands are still getting new young fans. Another way to think about it is after rock music faded away from the mainstream, we did get that 2010s emo and pop punk revival that I talked about earlier, but that scene, that revival, wasn't mainstream. So when emo and pop punk became popular again in recent years, it just makes sense that My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, all of those bands from the 2000s became popular again, because for the casual music fan, there was a giant void in emo and pop punk during the entire 10 years that was the 2010s. You might not like it, but a lot of casual fans of emo and pop punk have no idea who Title Fight are, or Modern Baseball are, or who The Wonder Years and The Story So Far are, but they can name every single song on the Black Parade. It's all about that mainstream attention, that mainstream appeal, something the 2005 scene had and something the scene right now doesn't have. And you also had a unique band like My Chemical Romance really carrying the flag for the entire emo and pop punk genres. They had aura, as the kids say. They had stage presence. They had theatrics. They stood out. It also helped having a band so unique like My Chemical Romance at the forefront of emo and pop punk. Sometimes it's not all about the music, it's about marketing. And speaking of marketing, wouldn't you know that Warped Tour is back? This was inevitable, in my opinion, because pretty much everything from the 2000s emo and pop punk scene is already back. I mean, Kevin Lyman sat back and saw When We Were Young Fest and Sad Summer sell all of these tickets and draw all of these people. And then he was like, all right, well, I'm going to bring back something that has more brand recognition than all of those things, more name value than all of those festivals, and has more history within the scene than all of those festivals because they're brand new. So he brought back the Warped Tour. Warped Tour is returning with a 2-day run in 3 cities in 2025, and as of this recording, no bands, there's been no lineup, nothing has been announced. And as soon as this entire new Warped Tour was announced, all I saw online was a lot of people complaining, 3 cities, this isn't even a real tour, I bet ticket prices are going to be insane. So ticket prices started out at about $150 for 2 days, and as of this recording, Orlando tickets are currently set at $229 and $449 for VIP. So after all the complaining, 2 out of the 3 cities are sold out. So some of you that were complaining online are lying because something doesn't add up here. If you ever wanted to experience the 2000s emo and pop punk scene, right now is a great time to do that, because pretty much everything from that scene is back. The only bands I could think of that haven't reunited yet are Rufio and Sugar Cult. Everyone else is back. Now I know the 2025 Warped Tour is going to be a nostalgia fest, and I'm not really that upset about it. That's what they're marketing it as, so it really shouldn't be a shock to a lot of people. I just hope that there's some new, younger bands that are on this lineup as well. There, is no mainstream outlet for any of the current bands in the scene of really any band in alternative rock. It's not just emo and pop punk. It's metal, ska, grunge, shoegaze, anything that you can think of. The only mainstream outlet is TikTok. Because if we want these bands back in the mainstream, if we want this music, this culture back in the mainstream, these bands back on movie soundtracks or TV show soundtracks, or performing on award shows or late night shows, we need some mainstream outlets for all of this music. And for its entire history, Warped Tour has been that outlet. And I know a lot of people don't like Warped Tour for a number of reasons, but you have to understand, Warped Tour for a lot of casual music fans just mean emo and pop punk. So when Warped Tour was back and it was trending online, a lot of people who hadn't listened to emo and pop punk in 10, 15 years started getting back into the scene. I do hope in the future there's some more dates on this new version of Warped Tour, because there's no love for the Midwest here at all. From 1997 to 2018, Warped Tour grossed about $367 million, and it's estimated that 10.6 million tickets were sold. We might never get something like this in the scene again, and if we look at the ticket sales so far for the 2025 Warped Tour, it's pretty obvious that people still crave emo, pop punk, and punk rock music. The 2005 Warped Tour wasn't just a summer festival, it was the defining moment of a generation that reshaped alternative music culture. Its influence can still be felt today with Warped Tour coming back. The scene that started it all is having its own revival, which is pretty amazing to see happen at all, and an entire new fan base is being created for alternative rock music, for emo, pop punk, and punk rock. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please like the video. It really helps me out, really helps the channel out. Please subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for watching.